So I first want to start by asking you about today. 26 people, according to several sources, have died, protesters across the country in Syria, killed in demonstrations.
Absolutely
Why
not.
is that crackdown continuing in Syria?
Absolutely not. These are blatant lies. People, I have challenged Reuters, the editor-in-chief of Reuters. I told him, every day, Rami Nakhleh from Beirut would call Reuters. He will tell you guys, today 13 persons died. Not a single person died today in Syria except one policeman that was shot.
Well, we would love to be able to go check for ourselves, but we can't because we're not given visas to go report from inside Syria.
You were given a visa and you did
for
go.
1
You know
week
this.
in June.
Yes.
But since we have not been able to go back.
Many other reporters have been reporting from inside Syria, and they are foreign reporters. But here is the story. You asked me a question. You need to hear the answer.
Sure, go ahead.
People give numbers in a very unrealistic way. Those numbers are never substantiated because this is what suits the Western media here. At least out of the list that was announced by the so-called activists in Syria, that of the killed people, 500. At least 500 have come out and said, we read our names in the lists of the killed and the fallen. We are alive and kicking. These are blatant lies. This is the problem we are facing today in Syria, a massive campaign of disinformation and lies.
Okay, again, I need to ask you, if we cannot go in and substantiate these numbers, prove them or disprove them, in fact, who can we believe? Why won't the government let us in?
You were invited. Did you report a single story about the atrocities and the massacres committed by the so-called peaceful protesters?
I was invited in, but not allowed to circulate inside of Syria.
Historically unprecedented brutality that is being committed right now in Syria against innocent people, against civilians, against policemen, and against the Syrian military. Never reported, never. And even when we provide you with evidence, we give you videotapes, we ask you to interview their families to substantiate the stories, the Western media categorically refuses.
I have to say that's not true at all. We have reported on the deaths of security forces, and we know that a number of the people who've been killed over the last several months have been security forces, but a large number have also been civilians, demonstrators, pro-democracy activists, and children. Amnesty International is saying more than 120 children were killed. How are they armed terrorists?
Many of those children happen to be families of military men and of policemen that were brutally murdered. Now, it's not only the murder, it's what happens after the brutal killing. They dismember their bodies. Even a family kin of mine, a relation to me, he was not only shot, but he was divided into 3 pieces and his core was sent to his wife. 3 pieces. 3 of my friends were also murdered. What I'm trying to tell you is what's happening today is in Syria is similar to what has happened in Iraq, when brutal groups will attack Sunni groups, Sunni mosques and Shiite mosques, so that they will incite civil war in Iraq.
So who are these armed gangs that materialized all of a sudden?
They are well known. We have published their names, their photographs. These are the leaders of what you love to call the leaders of Syrian democracy and freedom. Here are they. The first one is the Islamic Emir of Hamas. The third one is the leader of the freedom and democracy movement in Syria. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda, 3 days ago gave a speech in which he emphasized 2 things. He was bragging about September 11, and he was asking the Mujahideen of the Islamic world to go and join their Syrian Mujahideen brothers to fight against the Syrian regime.
You are saying that what's happening in Syria is some fundamentalist, Islamist, extremist, armed movement that is trying to destabilize the country.
If you are talking about the armed groups, absolutely. If you are talking about peaceful protesters, as of day one, and let me repeat this, and I will continue repeating this till the Western media reaches a tipping point that it starts understanding this. We believe that their demands are legitimate, and we are addressing their demands in a comprehensive way. Here is my challenge to those guys who are criticizing us. Syria is implementing right now, as we speak, unprecedented political reforms. By the time, I believe by February next year, the political scene in Syria will be unparalleled across the Arab world. And here is a challenge to the United States of America. Go to your friends that you usually offer them military protection and you build military bases in their lands and ask them to follow the good example that we are going to challenge the rest of the Arab world with.
One of the things you said in a radio interview a few days ago is that not a single demonstration in Syria has started from anywhere other than a mosque. Now, I was in Syria in June, as you know, and that's not true.
It is
There were
true.
demonstrations at Damascus University.
It's absolutely untrue.
In Aleppo University, there were demonstrations. A Sky News team filmed a demonstration in Aleppo that started nowhere near a mosque.
It's untrue. Everybody knows.
Why would everyone be lying?
No, they are not lying.
About Syria.
Look,
I don't understand.
This is let us be respectful and reasonable. Everybody knows. Everybody inside Syria and outside Syria that religious groups have started those demonstrations from mosque. Every Friday, it is the day in which people fear for their lives in Syria. Even the clergymen in Syria are saying publicly, are condemning the fact that fanatics have changed some of the mosques. Not every mosque. Not every mosque in Syria did witness a demonstration. I would say out of the 3,000 or 4,000 mosques in Syria, 70 or 80 mosques were the epicenter of those demonstrations. Now, what I want to say is the following. If people are really, and this is the overwhelming majority of the Syrian people, are really about political reforms, about a multi-party system, about transparent, free, democratic elections. This is the way ahead for Syria. If they are about their
You've given me
of
this paper
extremism
with
and brutality,
names
with their
and
names,
pictures.
Google them. They are all on the web.
Listen,
they don't hide themselves, by the way.
No, and I
Or their
will, but I can tell you about people I've met in person. I mean, I don't need to look at this. I can tell you I've met demonstrators that have protested, that are so afraid for their own safety because they say they're wanted by security forces that they're now in hiding. Others who say, you can interview me, but you need to blur out my face because my friend was taken into custody and tortured.
Look.
So are you saying that these people are all fantasizing
what I am
about
saying
this?
is the following. If you are in opposition in Syria and you are about political opposition, about opposing every policy of the Syrian government, you are okay, you are welcome. The new laws in Syria would allow you to form your own political party. The new media law is the most liberal law today in the whole Arab world. This is I am not denying it. This is new. It was not the case before. But this is the new reality in Syria. We have announced town hall style meetings across Syria for a national dialogue that is being attended by the opposition. And the sort of things they are saying is something that I have never ever heard before inside Syria. I'm telling you how the reality is changing and how the context is changing. We are having a new election law. And we are having a new party. The new party law has already been issued. Next February, we are having a multi-party, democratic, transparent election. Let the representatives of the Syrian people who will be elected, let them decide what they want for Syria, not those who hide their faces and tell you stories.
They may hide their faces because, like Gayath Matar, you heard of his story, a young 26-year-old who was in hiding, who was eventually taken into custody, and then his body was then recovered by his family.
Look, I told you this,
after having been in
I am
custody
repeating it.
for a week.
Terrible atrocities, unknown in the history of Syria, a very civilized country, have been committed in the last 6 months. This is similar to what has happened in Iraq. Why on hell would the Syrian security abduct a person, kill him, and then give his body dismembered and eviscerated to his family and tell them we did it?
Human rights groups would say that's to intimidate others. Is that not happening
Why
in
do
Syria?
we want to intimidate peaceful protesters when we are telling them, the new Syrian laws allow for peaceful demonstrations. You are allowed to have your political parties. You can express your opposition opinions on Syrian TV or everywhere you want.
So this young man was
you
killed.
can go to elections, and you believe we go and kill him?
Yeah. So
Just
you're saying
to
this young
tarnish-
man was not killed by security forces?
This man was
essentially.
killed by groups that want to further tarnish the image of the Syrian government because they believe this is their historically unprecedented opportunity to attack the Syrian regime and topple it for reasons that are well known to almost everybody.
So you're saying there are no instances in Syria over the last 6 months where activists or democracy protesters have been killed by security
What I am
forces?
saying is, Syria has appointed a judicial commission, and they are publicized across Syria. Every single family, every single person that has a complaint or that has been mistreated or that has lost a dear one should go there, and there is a commitment from President Assad that these incidents will be fully investigated. However, the question to you is,
so you're
who will
yes
hold
no
accountable those criminals who are committing atrocities across Syria, including killing children and women?
But are you saying yes or no to the question, have security forces killed demonstrators and activists
What
in
I
the
am
streets?
What I am saying is very clear. The government of Syria does not approve of this, and everyone who has wrongfully committed a crime will be held accountable. The challenge is not those guys, because those guys can be brought to court. The challenge is, how can we address those fanatic Islamic groups, the same groups that are bragging about September 11 and are calling the Mujahideen of the Islamic world to come to Syria?
Let me ask you about international reaction to what's happened in Syria. It's been very strong. We've heard from the United States, we've heard from Ban Ki-moon, we've heard from the French, we've heard from the UK, we've heard from the Arab League as well. And the Arab League Secretary General Nabil al-Arabi was in Damascus. Now, just to quote Ban Ki-moon yesterday, enough is enough. Arab countries, the killing machine in Syria has to stop. Erdogan, this is the Prime Minister of Turkey, the Syrian oppressors will not be able to stand on their feet. In other words, they won't survive.
Well, you have made a cherry-picking assortment of criticism. I can give you also comments from friendly countries, South Africa, Brazil, India, China, Russia, and a large number of friendly countries. But I'm not about one argument against a counter-argument. Here are Arab leaders who don't have constitutions, who don't have political parties,
well,
who
Prime
don't
Minister
have...
Erdogan does.
Who don't... I will come to Turkey. You mentioned Arab leaders. Let us discuss Arab leaders who don't have any sort of a political life, grandstanding on Syria. And then you have Turkey. Turkey is imposing herself now, rightly or wrongly, this is their choice, as the leader of the Islamic world. What they want is to say, we are the true heirs of the Ottomans. Here we are defending Hamas and the Islamic movement in Palestine. Here we are lambasting the only secular Arab regime, which happens to be the Syrian regime. This is their choice. We feel bad about it. This is not what we want from Turkey, but this is their choice. Having said this, yes, Prime Minister Erdogan said things. On the other hand, the secular opposition parties of Turkey were in Syria last week, and they were in support of the Syrian government. What I'm trying to tell you is even the opinion inside Turkey is divided about this. We are not happy with this fact, but these are the facts. Your audience are entitled to understand that the Arab leaders who are criticizing Syria would not even accept a pan-Arab political reform initiative that we have sent to the Arab League this week.
But why do you think this criticism is coming from Ban Ki-moon, from the Arab League? Do you think everybody is just... completely, what's the word I'm looking for?
I gave you a long list.
In the wrong. No. I'm asking, why would they come out and say that the Syrian regime is oppressing its own people, killing its own citizens at this point? Is it all a political agenda? If none of it is true, according to you?
Let me repeat this. The Syrian regime is not killing its citizens. The Syrian regime has acknowledged as of day one the legitimacy of the political demands of peaceful demonstrators. The fact is, today, you have very few demonstrations across Syria, not because they are fearful, it's the other way around. I personally met with demonstrators from Aleppo and Latakia who told me, while we participated at the beginning in the demonstrations because our requests have been about political freedoms, about democracy, now we are not anymore because this is being used by the Western powers and the Islamic fundamentalists for their own agendas. They have capitalized on our legitimate, rightful demands for their ulterior motives. And this is the major difference between the majority of Syrians, whether they oppose or they are loyal to the Syrian government, and those who are right now serving the interests of foreign agendas.
Let me ask you about the defections, because we've seen many defections from the Syrian army, and one very high-profile one in June was Hussein el-Harmoush, who fled to Turkey. Then a confession, I imagine I have to say quote-unquote a confession,
yes.
On Syrian TV, What happened to this man? Why did he, was he...
Well, let me address this story because it's another
Did he
ridiculous
return to
story.
Syria willingly?
Let
or-
me address this story.
Yeah.
First, there were no really defections in any significant numbers. He actually said this on TV yesterday. He said, I defected. I was hoping that many other soldiers and officers will join me. I was isolated and lonely for a very long period of time. He felt that he lost his country and he didn't achieve anything. He was so disappointed and disoriented, and he came back and he gave up himself.
Not under duress? This was all completely...
He came from Turkey. How
without-
can he be under duress while he was inside Turkey? As you know, he fled to Turkey and he was giving all his media, and in every
Was his
media
confession a free
interview,
confession?
in every media
Or was he
interview, he was
threatened?
claiming that he has soldiers and officers with him. He came back alone by himself. Where are his soldiers and officers? Those are fantasies. What they really want is to see the Syrian army disintegrate and start fighting each other. This will only serve the grand designs of those who have always felt that Syria is a pain in their neck because of its positions towards Israel.
Let me ask you about your situation. You have some travel limitations imposed on you inside the United States. I know that there's something similar with regards to your counterpart in Damascus,
True.
Robert Ford. So you have to apply for permission to leave the Washington area?
I have no plans whatsoever to apply for such a permission. I'm not going to apply for such a permission. If the United States of America doesn't want me to travel outside Washington, D.C., I will not. I hope Ambassador Ford will also comply with Syrian laws,
And
the way I comply with U.S. laws.
What discussions do you have? Do you have any discussions right now with the administration, with the State Department? What is the status of those discussions, if there are any?
I'm not at liberty to disclose these discussions. I'm so sorry. I would have loved to.
But there are discussions.
Ongoing, yes.
Can I just ask at what level? At the State Department or in the White House?
Let me say State Department.
At the State Department. And these are ongoing?
They have not stopped, not to my knowledge. On both sides, the U.S. Embassy in Damascus and the Syrian Embassy.
Now, I know you're not at liberty to give details, but are they discussions regarding the situation inside of Syria, about Robert Ford, the ambassador, on what general topic?
I'm not at liberty to disclose. I'm very sorry.
Because so many people would be interested in knowing, of course, you're the representative of Syria in the United States, on what level at the State Department is one thing, but what the broad topic of discussion might be.
I have already said this. No comment.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.